the darkest corners of space where even light fears to travel, there exists a passage so forbidden that entire civilizations have built their laws around avoiding it. For 3,000 years, every species in the galaxy has obeyed one simple rule: never enter the Crimson Nebula's heart, where the Xeno Queen sleeps. But humans? Humans don't read the fine print. When Captain Marcus Chen's exploration vessel accidentally breaches the ancient boundary, he awakens something that has been waiting centuries for revenge. The Xeno Queen, a being of pure malice and unimaginable power, speaks her first words in millennia. You should never have crossed this passage, human. What she doesn't know is that humanity's greatest strength isn't their technology, their weapons, or their ships. It's their absolute refusal to bow down to anyone, even a goddess of destruction who can tear apart planets with her thoughts. This is the story of what happens when an unstoppable force meets the most stubborn species in the galaxy. This is the story of why the universe learned to fear a single word: human. Captain Marcus Chen pressed his palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's railing, watching the swirling crimson clouds of the nebula grow larger through the reinforced viewport. The exploration vessel Endeavour hummed quietly around him, its engines maintaining a steady course toward what his crew had dubbed the Pretty Red Cloud. Pretty was an understatement. The crimson nebula stretched across their view like spilled blood mixed with liquid starlight. Beautiful and terrifying, in equal measure, Captain. We're picking up some interesting readings, called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the bridge. Her voice carried the excitement that came with discovering something new in the vast emptiness of space. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Marcus smiled. This was exactly why he loved deep space exploration. Every day brought the possibility of finding something that would rewrite the textbooks back on Earth. He pushed off from the railing and headed toward the bridge, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates. The bridge buzzed with quiet activity. His crew of 12 worked at their stations, monitoring instruments and running scans. They were good people, hand-picked for this mission. Geography. Each one had volunteered to spend 18 months in the dark between stars, searching for new worlds and new possibilities for humanity. "What kind of readings, Kim?" Marcus asked, settling into his captain's chair. "What?" "Energy patterns that seem almost organized," she replied, fingers dancing across her console, like there's some kind of structure deep inside the nebula. "And Captain, the electromagnetic signature suggests technology, but it's old, really old." Dr. James Rodriguez, their xenoarchaeologist, looked up from his station with bright eyes. "Captain, if there's ancient technology in there, we could be looking at first contact evidence. This could be the discovery of the century." First contact had been humanity's dream since they first looked up at the stars. So far, they'd found plenty of dead worlds and ancient ruins, but no living civilizations. The possibility that something might be waiting in that beautiful red cloud made his heart race. "Be analysis," he ordered. "I want to know everything about that nebula before we get close." Chief Engineer Tommy Park spoke up from his station near the back. "Captain, I'm seeing some unusual gravitational distortions too. Nothing dangerous, but the space in there isn't behaving normally." "Define not normal, Tommy. It's like space itself is thicker somehow, denser. My instruments are reading gravitational fields that shouldn't exist without massive objects to create them." Marcus frowned. Space was supposed to be mostly empty, even inside nebulae. Gravitational distortions without visible sources meant either their instruments were malfunctioning or they'd stumbled onto something extraordinary. "Distance to the nebula's edge?" he asked. 47 minutes at current speed," replied Navigator Lisa Wong. "Do you want me to reduce velocity for a cautious approach?" Marcus considered this. Caution was smart when dealing with unknown phenomena. But they'd been traveling for 8 months to reach this region of space, and their mission window was limited. Every day they delayed meant less time for exploration. "Maintain current speed, but bring us to yellow alert," he decided. "I want all sensors active and everyone ready for anything unusual." The next 47 minutes passed slowly. Marcus watched the crimson clouds grow larger until they filled the entire viewport. Up close, the nebula was even more beautiful. Threads of red and gold swirled together like cosmic paint, and occasional flashes of blue lightning danced between the gas clouds. "Entering the nebula's outer edge now," Lisa announced. The ship shuddered slightly as they passed through the boundary between normal space and the nebula's interior. Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity running across his skin. "Everything still normal?" he asked. "All systems green," Tommy confirmed. "About that the gravitational distortion is getting stronger. It's almost like we're being pulled towards something." "Pulled?" Marcus sat forward. "Are we in danger?" "No, sir. It's very gentle, more like a current than a force. But we're definitely being drawn toward the center of the nebula." "Doctor?" Rodriguez was practically vibrating with excitement. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's in here, it's massive and it's active. This could be it. This could be our first contact with alien intelligence." Marcus felt the same excitement building in his chest, but years of command had taught him to balance hope with caution. "Sarah, any signs of hostile intent? Weapons signatures? Aggressive movements? Anything like that?"
"Nothing, Captain."
"Whatever's out there, it's just waiting." The word waiting sent a small chill down Marcus's spine. He shook it off. They were explorers, and this was what they'd come to find. "Take us deeper," he ordered, "but keep scanning everything. If there's someone home, I want to know about it before we knock on their door." The Endeavor pushed deeper into the crimson clouds. The place in the nebula seemed to close around them like a living thing, the red mist growing thicker until the stars disappeared entirely. Their ship's lights carved a small bubble of visibility in the cosmic fog, but beyond that, everything was the color of blood. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tight with concern. "I'm losing navigational references. The normal stellar markers are gone, and my instruments are having trouble penetrating this nebula material."
"Switch to internal navigation. Marcus ordered. Use our inertial guidance system." "Already tried, sir."
"Something about this space is interfering with our instruments. It's like the normal rules of physics are flexible in here." Tommy's voice joined the growing chorus of concern. "Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy patterns. They're starting to affect our ship's systems. Nothing dangerous yet, but our efficiency is dropping." Marcus stood up, moving to look over Sarah's shoulder at her sensor displays. The readings showed energy patterns unlike anything he'd ever seen. Waves of force rippled through space around them, creating a kind of rhythm that almost seemed alive. "Is it possible we're inside some kind of artificial construct?" he asked Dr. Rodriguez. "It's possible, Captain. The energy signatures are too organized to be natural. But if this is artificial, it's technology beyond anything we can understand." "Captain," Lisa's voice carried a note of alarm, "I'm detecting a massive structure ahead. Distance unclear. Size unclear. Everything about this thing is unclear except that it's huge." Marcus moved to the main viewport and peered into the red mist. At first, he saw nothing but swirling clouds. Then, gradually, like a mountain emerging from fog, something began to take shape in the distance. It was enormous, a structure that seemed to go on forever in all directions, made of some dark material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Geometric patterns covered its surface, glowing with a faint purple light that pulsed in the same rhythm as the energy waves they'd been detecting. "My God," Dr. Rodriguez whispered. It's a city, a space city the size of a moon." "Captain," Sarah said, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of their discovery, "I'm detecting life signs, lots of them. And, sir, I think they know we're here." As if responding to her words, the purple lights on the massive structure began to pulse faster. The rhythm changed from slow and steady to quick and urgent, like a heartbeat accelerating. "Defensive positions," Marcus ordered automatically. "Tommy, can we retreat if we need to?" "I'll try, Captain, but those gravitational currents are stronger now. It's like something is actively pulling us toward that structure." "Protocol." Marcus gripped his chair's armrest. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of, and feared in equal measure. They'd found something incredible, something that proved humanity wasn't alone in the universe, but they'd also found it in one of the most isolated regions of space, where no one would ever think to look for them if things went wrong. "Open communication channels," he ordered. "All frequencies, all protocols. If there's someone in there, let's try to say hello." Sarah worked at her console for several minutes. "Channels open, Captain. broadcasting standard greeting protocols in 17 different mathematical languages. They waited. The massive structure continued to pulse with purple light, and the Endeavor continued to drift closer despite Tommy's efforts to maintain position. The silence stretched on until Marcus began to wonder if anyone was listening. Then, the communications console exploded with sound. Not words, not even recognizable language, but a presence that filled the bridge like a physical force. It was the sound of intelligence, vast and ancient and utterly alien. When the presence spoke, every human on the bridge felt it in their bones. You should never have crossed this passage, human. The voice was female but not human. It carried the weight of centuries and the cold fury of someone who had been waiting a very long time for revenge. When it spoke the word human, it sounded like a curse. Marcus found his voice, though it took considerable effort. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth vessel Endeavor. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. The presence laughed, and the sound made the ship's hull vibrate. Peace? Knowledge? Friendship? You speak words you do not understand, little creature? I am Zenthara, Queen of the Void, Empress of the Dark Between Stars. I have waited 3,000 years for one of your kind to find their way to my domain. Our kind? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Humans, she spat. The plague that spreads across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. The species that destroyed my people and drove me into exile in this forsaken corner of space. And now you come to me in your little metal shells speaking of peace? Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Your Majesty, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Humanity has never encountered your people before. We've been searching for other intelligent life for centuries. The Queen's laughter turned darker. Lies. Sweet lies wrapped in innocent words. Your species has a talent for deception that rivals your talent for destruction. But I know what you are. I know what you do to those who stand in your way. Marcus felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. Whatever had happened 3,000 years ago, this being clearly held humanity responsible for some great tragedy. And now they were trapped in her domain, far from help, facing something with the power to create gravitational fields and influence space itself. Your Majesty, he said carefully, if humanity wronged your people in the past, we would like to make amends. Perhaps we can discuss. Silence. The word hit them like a physical blow, and several of the bridge displays flickered. You will make amends, human. Oh yes, you will pay for every life your kind has taken. But first you will answer for the greatest crime of all. You will answer for the death of my daughter. The purple lights on the massive structure flared brighter, and Marcus felt the ship lurch forward as if grabbed by a giant hand. Whatever was pulling them toward that alien city had just become much stronger. Tommy, can you break us free? He asked urgently. Negative, Captain. Whatever's got us, it's not something our engines can overcome. Marcus looked around at his crew. 12 good people who had trusted him to keep them safe while they explored the wonders of the universe. Now they were prisoners of an alien queen who blamed humanity for crimes they didn't even know they'd committed. Sarah, record everything, he ordered. Full sensor logs, communication records, everything. If we don't make it out of here, at least Earth will know what happened. Already on it, Captain. The alien city grew larger in their viewport, its dark surface now clearly visible through the crimson mist. Marcus could see structures that might have been buildings, though their architecture followed no human logic. Spires twisted into impossible spirals, bridges connected towers that seemed to float without support, and everything pulsed with that strange purple light. Queen Zenthara's presence filled the bridge again, her voice carrying a satisfaction that made Marcus's skin crawl. Welcome to my domain, humans. Welcome to the place where you will learn that the universe has a memory, and that memory has a very long reach. The Endeavor was pulled inexorably toward an opening in the massive structure, a bay that seemed to dilate like an eye to accept their ship. Marcus gripped his chair and prepared for whatever came next. It'd come looking for first contact, and they'd found it. But instead of the peaceful meeting of minds they'd dreamed of, they'd stumbled into a trap that had been waiting 3,000 years to close. As their ship passed through the opening and into the alien structure, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their real journey was just beginning. They'd entered the domain of something vast and angry and patient beyond human understanding. And somewhere in the dark halls of this impossible city, they would have to find a way to survive long enough to learn the truth about humanity's past and their species' future. The bay sealed shut behind them, cutting off their view of the stars. They were inside now, guests of a queen who considered them criminals, trapped in a structure that defied the laws of physics, surrounded by technology they couldn't understand and forces they couldn't fight, but they were still alive, still thinking, still human. And as long as they remained human, Marcus thought grimly, they would find a way to keep going. It's what humans did best. They survived, they adapted, and they never gave up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The real test was about to begin. The docking bay that enclosed the Endeavor defied every expectation Marcus had about alien architecture. The walls curved and flowed like liquid metal frozen in motion, covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Purple light pulsed through veins in the structure, providing illumination that cast no shadows. The air itself seemed thick with energy, making the hair on Marcus's arms stand up despite his ship's environmental systems. "Atmospheric analysis complete," reported Dr. Rodriguez, staring at his readings with disbelief.
Captain, this is impossible.
The atmosphere outside is perfectly breathable for humans. Oxygen, nitrogen, even the pressure is almost identical to Earth's standard. "How is that possible?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Either it's an incredible coincidence, or whoever built this place knows a lot about human biology, Rodriguez replied grimly. Tommy Park looked up from his engineering console, his face pale. "Captain, our ship's systems are being scanned. Something is analyzing every circuit, every power coupling, every line of code in our computers. It's like they're learning how we work from the inside out. Can you block it? I've tried every countermeasure we have. Whatever's doing this operates on principles I don't understand. It's not hacking our systems so much as reading them like a book." Sarah Kim interrupted from her communication station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission, audio and visual." "Put it on screen." The main display flickered and resolved into an image that made several crew members gasp. Queen Zinthara stood in what appeared to be a vast throne room, but she was not what any of them had expected. Kind in general shape, but clearly alien. Her skin was pale blue-white, almost translucent, revealing a network of silver veins beneath the surface. Her hair fell in sheets of liquid darkness that seemed to absorb light, and her eyes were solid black with tiny stars floating in their depths. She wore robes that moved like living shadow, and when she gestured, reality seemed to bend around her fingers. But it was her expression that chilled Marcus to the bone. This was a being consumed by grief that had hardened into pure hatred over thousands of years. "Welcome aboard my vessel, humans," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "I trust you find the accommodations familiar. I have studied your kind extensively during my exile. I know your weaknesses, your fears, your desperate need for air and warmth and light. I have prepared a place for you that will meet all your biological needs while you await judgment." "Your Majesty," Marcus said, standing and facing the screen. "I request an audience to discuss this misunderstanding. Whatever happened in the past, we had no part in it. Humanity has never encountered your people before today." Zintara's laugh was like the sound of dying stars. "No part in it? You claim innocence while wearing the face of your ancestors? You carry their DNA, their memories encoded in your very cells. You are them, just as they were you." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Your Majesty, that's not how genetics work. We're not responsible for the actions of people who lived thousands of years ago, even if they were our ancestors." "Silence, scholar," Zenthara commanded, and Rodriguez stumbled backward as if struck by an invisible force. "Your words are like poison honey, sweet and deadly. I will not be deceived by human cunning a second time." The queen gestured, and the image expanded to show more of her throne room. The space was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up until it disappeared in darkness. Massive pillars supported galleries where shadowy figures moved, but it was the walls that captured everyone's attention. They were covered in what looked like memorial tablets, thousands upon thousands of them, each one glowing with soft light. Do you see this, humans? Xanthara asked, her voice heavy with ancient pain. Each light represents one of my people who died because of your kind. 47 million souls, snuffed out by human greed and human cruelty. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. 47 million deaths was genocide on an unimaginable scale. If humanity had really done something like that, how, he asked quietly. How did this happen? Xanthara's black eyes fixed on him through the screen. You truly don't know, do you? Your species has forgotten their greatest crime, how perfectly human to destroy an entire civilization and then lose the memory of it. She raised her hand and the air around the Endeavor shimmered. Suddenly, Marcus and his crew found themselves standing in the throne room itself. One moment they were on their bridge, the next they were in an alien space so vast it had its own weather patterns. Teleportation, Tommy whispered, his engineering mind trying to process what had just happened. She moved us through solid matter without any technological interface we can detect. Correct, little engineer, Xanthara said, having heard him despite the enormous distance between them and her throne. I am what your kind once called a space witch, though the term hardly does justice to my abilities. I can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, bend space and time to my will, and reach into your minds to pluck out thoughts like flowers from a garden. She gestured again, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation in his brain. Suddenly, images began flowing through his mind. Not his memories, but something else. Something old and terrible. He saw ships, human ships, but not like anything in current use. These were sleek and predatory, painted with symbols he didn't recognize. He watched them descend on beautiful crystal cities that floated in the void, cities that pulsed with the same purple light as Xanthara's domain. He saw human soldiers in powered armor storming through alien corridors, their weapons cutting down beings that looked like Xanthara. He watched cities burn with blue fire, saw evacuation ships exploding as they tried to flee, witnessed the systematic destruction of an entire civilization. And through it all, he heard voices. Dairy, human voices speaking in accents he couldn't place, using words that were almost familiar but subtly different. They spoke of cleansing the void, of removing the space witch threat, of securing human expansion routes. When the visions ended, Marcus found himself on his knees gasping. Around him, his crew was in similar states of shock. They'd all seen the same thing, experienced the same horrific memories. Now you know, Xanthara said, her voice filled with cold satisfaction. Now you understand why I have waited so long for one of your kind to find me. Your ancestors called themselves the Void Purifiers. They claimed my people were a threat to human expansion into deep space. They said we were demons, monsters, things that had no right to exist in a universe meant for humanity alone. Dr. Rodriguez struggled to his feet, his face pale but his scientific mind still working. Those ships, that technology, it's completely different from anything in our historical records. If this happened 3,000 years ago, it was during the lost centuries. The lost centuries. Marcus knew the term from his academy studies. A period in human history where records were spotty at best, where entire colonies had vanished and whole civilizations had risen and fallen without leaving clear evidence. Historians had always assumed it was due to the chaos of early space exploration and colonization. Lost centuries, Xanthara repeated mockingly. How convenient that you lost the records of your greatest shame. But I remember. I remember everything. I was there when your fleets appeared in our space. I was there when they began their campaign of extermination. Ramba Merrick in Shiloh. She stood from her throne, and as she did, her true size became apparent. She was at least 9 feet tall, but more than that, she seemed to fill space in a way that hurt to perceive directly. When she moved, reality moved with her. I was the daughter of the Void Empress, heir to a civilization that had existed for 50,000 years. We were explorers, philosophers, artists. We had never made war on another species. We welcomed your early scouts with curiosity and friendship, eager to learn about these strange new beings who traveled in metal shells.
She began walking toward them, and with each step the memorial lights on the walls pulsed brighter.
And how did your kind repay our hospitality? With plasma fire and nuclear death. They came in numbers too great to count, with weapons designed specifically to kill my people. They had studied us, learned our weaknesses, planned their attack for years. Marcus found his voice. Your Majesty, if this really happened, then on behalf of humanity, I apologize. What our ancestors did was wrong. But we're not them. We're different people from a different time. Different? Synthara laughed, and the sound made the massive pillars vibrate. You wear the same faces, carry the same arrogance, speak the same lies. Your ship's computers contain star maps showing human colonies spread across half the galaxy. You have taken everything just as they said you would. Lieutenant Kim stepped forward bravely. Your Majesty, those colonies are peaceful. We don't make war on other species anymore. We've changed. Have you? Zenthara stopped walking and fixed her black gaze on Kim. What happened to the Kepler civilization, the blue-skinned people of the Vega system, the crystal cities of Altair? Kim looked confused. I don't know those names. Of course you don't, because they're all gone. Wiped out by human expansion over the past 3,000 years. Oh, not with fleets and armies like my people faced. Your species learned subtlety. Now you destroy civilizations with economics and politics and cultural contamination. The end result is the same. Everywhere humans go, other species disappear. Marcus felt a chill run through him. Was she right? Had humanity really been responsible for the extinction of multiple alien civilizations? It seemed impossible, but then again, so did everything else that was happening. Even if that's true, he said, it doesn't justify revenge against us. We're explorers, scientists. We came here seeking knowledge and peaceful contact. Zenthara reached them and looked down at Marcus with eyes like black holes. Peaceful contact. Yes, that's what your ancestors said too. Right up until they began the killing. She gestured, and suddenly Marcus could move freely. Around him, his crew was also released from whatever force had been holding them in place. Do you want to prove you're different from your ancestors? She asked. Very well. I will give you a chance. 3 trials, each designed to test whether humanity has truly changed. Say in all 3, and I will release you to return to your people with a warning. Stay out of my domain and leave the remaining spaceborne species in peace. Fail even one trial, and you will join your ancestors in death. Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. What kind of trials? The first will test your compassion. Can you choose correctly when the lives of the innocent hang in the balance? The second will test your wisdom. Can you see truth when it's hidden behind comfortable lies? The third will test your courage. Can you face the darkness in your own species and still choose to do what's right? Marcus looked around at his crew. They were scared, he could see it in their eyes, but they were also determined. They hadn't come this far just to give up. And if we refuse to participate in your trials, then you die now, quickly and cleanly. Your choice, Captain Marcus Chen of Earth. Marcus considered their options. They had no weapons that could threaten a being who could manipulate space and time. They had no way to escape from her domain. Their only chance was to prove that humanity had truly evolved beyond the monsters who had destroyed her people. We accept your trials, Your Majesty, he said formally. Zenthara smiled. And for the first time, Marcus saw something other than hatred in her expression. There was sadness there, and hope, and a desperate desire to be proven wrong about humanity. Excellent, she said. The first trial begins now. The throne room around them began to fade, replaced by something else entirely. Marcus found himself standing in a human settlement, but not one he recognized. The buildings were wrong, the technology was different, and the sky overhead was alien. This is a memory, Zenthara's voice said from everywhere and nowhere. A human colony world called Haven's Rest, established 2,000 years ago. Watch, and when the moment comes, choose wisely. Around them, the settlement came to life. Marcus saw human families going about their daily business, children playing in the streets, merchants selling goods in a bustling marketplace. It looked peaceful, prosperous, normal. Then he saw them. Aliens walking among the humans, but not as equals. They wore simple clothes and carried heavy burdens, clearly serving as laborers. Their faces were resigned, their movements careful and submissive. The Tauri people, Zenthara's voice explained. the original inhabitants of this world. When humans arrived, they were welcomed as guests. Within a generation, they had become slaves. Marcus watched the scene unfold, seeing the casual cruelty with which the humans treated their alien workers. A human child threw stones at a young Tauri for fun, while adults looked on and laughed. A merchant cheated an alien customer, and then had him beaten for complaining. A human supervisor worked alien laborers until they collapsed from exhaustion. This is the first trial, Xenthara said. You have the power to change this scene, to alter the memory and create a different outcome. But changing the past requires a price. To save the Tauri people, one of your crew must take their place. One human life in exchange for the freedom of an entire species. Choose. Marcus felt his heart stop. Around him, his crew members looked at each other with growing understanding of what they were being asked to do. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to save people who had been dead for 2,000 years. But as he looked at the suffering aliens and the memory around them, Marcus realized that this wasn't really about the past. This was about proving whether humanity could choose to do the right thing, even when it cost them everything. The first trial had begun, and already it was testing not just their compassion, but their willingness to sacrifice for others. Marcus looked at his crew, seeing the same realization in their eyes. They had come seeking first contact and found judgment instead. Now they had to prove that humanity deserved a second chance. The question was, would they be able to live up to that challenge? But the silence stretched between Marcus and his crew as they watched the horrific scene play out around them. The memory of Haven's Rest continued its cruel dance, humans treating the alien Tauri like property while the original inhabitants of the world suffered in silence. The weight of Xenthara's offer hung heavy in the air. Save an entire species at the cost of one human life. Captain, whispered Dr. Hub. Rodriguez, his voice tight with emotion. We can't just watch this happen, even if it's just a memory. I know, Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on a young Tauri child who was being forced to carry a load twice her size while human children threw garbage at her. But the cost, I'll do it, Lieutenant Kim said suddenly, stepping forward. If someone has to take their place, I volunteer. No, said Chief Park immediately. I am older. I've lived my life. It should be me. You both have families back on Earth, argued Navigator Wong. I'm single, no dependents. The logical choice is obvious. Marcus felt a swell of pride and heartbreak as he watched his crew. Even facing this impossible choice, they were thinking of others first. But something about the trial bothered him. It was too simple, too obvious. Xenthara was testing more than their compassion. She was testing their wisdom, too. Wait, he said, holding up a hand. Think about this carefully. We're being asked to sacrifice someone to change the past. But if this is truly a memory, can the past actually be changed? And if it can be, what are the implications? Dr. Kushiri, Rodriguez's eyes widened as understanding dawned. The temporal paradox. If we change this event, it could alter the entire timeline. Haven's Rest might never have become a successful colony. The families living here, their descendants scattered across the galaxy, they might never exist. Exactly, Marcus said, beginning to see the true nature of the test. We're not just being asked to choose between one life and many. We're being asked to play with forces that could unmake billions of people who were born because history unfolded the way it did. Xenthara's voice echoed around them, carrying a note of something that might have been approval. Interesting. You begin to see the complexity of the choice. But the suffering before you is real, even if it is memory. Can you watch injustice unfold and do nothing knowing you have the power to stop it? Marcus looked around at the scene again. A human overseer was beating an elderly Tauri worker who had stumbled under his load. The alien's family watched in helpless terror, afraid to intervene lest they make things worse. Every instinct, Marcus had screamed at him to act, to stop the cruelty he was witnessing. But his rational mind knew the trap. This wasn't really about saving the Tauri, it was about understanding the true nature of responsibility and consequence. Your Majesty, he said aloud, I believe this trial is testing whether we understand the difference between justice and vengeance. You want us to see that even good intentions can have terrible consequences if we don't think them through. Do I? Xenthara's voice carried amusement and something deeper. Or perhaps I simply want to see you suffer as I have suffered, watching injustice and being powerless to stop it without making things worse. The scene around them intensified. The human colonists became more cruel, the Tauri more desperate. Marcus watched a family of aliens being torn apart as their children were sold to different owners. He saw elderly Tauri work to death in the mines while humans grew rich from their labor. Every moment brought fresh horrors that made his soul ache. This is unbearable, gasped Dr. Rodriguez. How can we just stand here and watch? Because sometimes, Marcus said through gritted teeth, the hardest thing to do is nothing. Not because we don't care, but because we understand that some problems can't be solved by simple sacrifice. But even as he spoke, he saw something that changed everything. A young Tauri girl, no more than 8 years old by human standards, collapsed under the weight of the stones she was carrying. The human overseer raised his whip to beat her, and Marcus saw something in the child's eyes that he'd seen in his own daughter's face when she was scared. "Stop," he said quietly. The overseer's hand paused in mid-swing. "I said stop!" Marcus roared, and the entire scene froze around them. "Ah," said Xanthara's voice, now carrying definite satisfaction. "You have chosen to act. But at what cost? Tell me, Captain, how do you propose to save this child without destroying the timeline?" Marcus closed his eyes, thinking furiously. There had to be a way to help without causing paradox. There had to be a solution that served justice without creating new injustices. Then it came to him. "We don't change the past," he said. "We change the lesson." "Explain." Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at the frozen scene before him. "This memory, this trial, it's not really about the Tauri people who died 2,000 years ago. It's about the lesson that current humanity needs to learn. We can't save these people, but we can honor their memory by doing better now." He turned to face his crew. "We memorize every face, every injustice, every moment of suffering we've witnessed here. And when we return to Earth, if we return to Earth, we make sure this never happens again. We become the advocates for alien rights that these people never had." Lieutenant Kim nodded slowly. "We don't sacrifice one life to save many in the past. We sacrifice our comfortable ignorance to save many in the future." "Precisely," Marcus said. "The real trial isn't about changing history. It's about whether we're willing to be changed by history." The frozen scene began to move again, but differently now. Instead of watching the cruelty passively, Marcus and his crew began to speak with the human colonists, not as outsiders trying to change the past, but as visitors learning about their own species' capacity for both good and evil. "You're making a mistake," Marcus told the overseer who had been about to beat the child. "This isn't what humanity should be." The overseer looked at him with confusion. "Who are you to judge us? We're building civilization in the wilderness. These aliens are lucky we let them live at all." "We're your descendants," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "And we're here to tell you that this path leads only to shame and regret." Slowly, carefully, without changing the fundamental events of the memory, they began to plant seeds of doubt in the colonists' minds. Not enough to alter history, but enough to make them question their actions. It was a delicate balance, requiring all their wisdom and compassion. As they worked, Marcus began to understand something profound about the nature of justice. Sometimes the most important battles weren't fought with weapons or grand gestures, but with small acts of conscience and the courage to bear witness to suffering. The scene around them gradually faded, replaced by the vast throne room where Xanthara waited. The alien queen studied them with her star-like eyes, her expression unreadable. "Interesting," she said finally. "You chose neither the simple sacrifice nor the comfortable inaction. Instead, you chose the harder path, to carry the burden of knowledge and let it change you. You begin to show wisdom." Marcus felt a flicker of hope, but he knew they weren't finished yet. "Now, Your Majesty. The second trial, Your Majesty. The second trial tests whether you can see truth when it contradicts everything you believe about yourselves. Come." The throne room shifted around them, walls flowing like water until they stood in what appeared to be a human research facility. Scientists in white coats moved between workstations, their faces bright with discovery and purpose. Everything looked clean, efficient, and humanitarian. "This is the Kepler Research Station," Xanathara explained. one of humanity's most prestigious xenological research facilities. Here, your scientists study alien life forms to better understand the universe. A noble purpose, wouldn't you agree? Marcus nodded, recognizing the type of facility from his own education. These kinds of stations have contributed enormously to human knowledge. Here, they're peaceful research installations. Are they? Zentara gestured, and the scene around them became transparent, revealing what lay beneath the clean, sterile surface. Marcus felt his stomach lurch. Below the research levels were containment areas filled with alien beings in various states of distress. Some were clearly subjects of medical experiments, others were being dissected while still alive, and still others were being subjected to psychological torture disguised as behavioral research.
No, Dr.
Rodriguez whispered, his face pale. This can't be real. The human research ethics would never allow this. Wouldn't they? Synthara asked. These are aliens, after all. Non-human. Your ethics committees classified them as intelligent specimens rather than sentient beings. Legally, they have the same rights as laboratory animals. Marcus watched in horror as a team of human scientists calmly discussed the best way to vivisect a clearly terrified alien while it was conscious. Their conversation was clinical, professional, completely devoid of empathy for the being they were about to torture. This is the truth about human expansion, Zenthara continued. Every research station like this has similar facilities. Every colony world has similar policies. You have simply redefined other species as non-persons to make their exploitation morally acceptable. But this is current, Lieutenant Kim said, her voice shaking. This isn't ancient history. If this is happening now, we could report it, stop it, could you? Zenithara's voice carried dark amusement. Dr. Rodriguez, what would happen if you reported illegal alien experimentation at a major research facility? Dr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. But they'd need evidence. And the security classifications on this kind of research are extremely high. And honestly, the definition of person under human law is quite narrow. Legally speaking, this might not even be illegal. Marcus felt sick. Was this what humanity had become? Had they simply learned to hide their cruelty behind bureaucracy and legal technicalities? The second trial, Zenthara announced, is simple. Look at this facility and tell me honestly, is this an aberration, or is this the true face of human civilization? Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing his own horror reflected in their faces. This wasn't what they'd signed up for when they joined the exploration service. They believed they were part of something noble, something that would make the universe a better place. But as he forced himself to really examine what they were seeing, Marcus began to recognize disturbing parallels to things he'd observed but never questioned. The casual way humans discussed primitives who needed to be uplifted, the research stations that were always classified beyond public scrutiny, the colonies that somehow never seemed to have indigenous populations, despite clear evidence that intelligent life had once existed there. I think, he said slowly, this might be closer to normal than any of us want to admit. Dr. Rodriguez nodded reluctantly. The signs were there. We just didn't want to see them. The missing species databases, the classified research protocols, the way certain subjects were always off limits to public discussion. Chief Park looked around the facility with an engineer's eye for detail. The design is standardized. This isn't one rogue facility. This is an institutional pattern repeated across multiple installations. Marcus felt something breaking inside him. His whole life he'd believed humanity was fundamentally good, that they were the heroes of their own story. But if this was true, if this was what human civilization had become, then maybe Zenthara's anger wasn't misplaced after all. Your Majesty, he said quietly, if this is truly representative of human civilization, then we deserve whatever judgment you pass on us. But even as he spoke, something else occurred to him. However, the fact that we can see this as wrong, that we're horrified by it, proves that not all humans are complicit. There must be others like us, people who would fight to change this if they knew about it. Perhaps, Zenthara said, but good intentions are worth little if they never become good actions. Your species has a talent for looking away from uncomfortable truths. Will you be different? Marcus looked around at his crew again. Approaches. They were scientists, explorers, idealists who had joined the space service because they believed in humanity's potential for good. If anyone could make a difference, it would be people like them. "We will," he said with growing conviction. "When we return to Earth, we won't just report what we found here. We'll dedicate our lives to exposing and stopping these atrocities." "Old words," Xanthara replied. "But words are easy. The third trial will test whether you have the courage to act on your convictions when the cost is higher than you can imagine." And the research facility faded away, replaced by something that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. They were standing on the bridge of a human battleship, but not any battleship he recognized. This vessel was enormous, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Around them, similar ships stretched away in all directions, forming a fleet of truly massive proportions. "This is the real test," Xanthara said, her voice now carrying the weight of absolute finality. "This is the human fleet that is currently approaching Earth. They have discovered my location through your ship's transmissions, and they are coming to finish what their ancestors started 3,000 years ago." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "What? Your ship's communications with Earth included your navigational data? In 6 months, this fleet will arrive to rescue you and eliminate the alien threat that captured you?" 47 ships armed with Nova bombs and reality disruption weapons. More than enough firepower to destroy my entire realm and everything in it. But this magnitude of the situation hit Marcus like a physical blow. While they'd been undergoing Xanthara's trials, Earth had been preparing for war against a being they saw as a threat to humanity. And if that fleet arrived while tensions were still high, the third trial is this. Xanthara continued, "I will give you access to a quantum communicator that can reach Earth instantly. You can warn them away, tell them you're safe, and there's no threat here. But to do so, you must convince them to trust your word over their own fears. And you must do it while knowing that if you fail, billions of innocent aliens throughout this region of space will die when they decide to cleanse the area of the space witch threat." She gestured, and a complex device appeared before Marcus. It pulsed with the same purple energy that permeated everything in her domain. "The choice is yours, Captain. Use the communicator and try to prevent a war that could destroy entire civilizations. But know that every word you speak will be analyzed by military intelligence officers who are already convinced that you've been compromised by alien mind control. Convince them or watch the universe burn." Understanding finally the true weight of what Xanthara had been testing. It wasn't just about humanity's past crimes or present failings. It was about their future choices, about whether they could evolve beyond their history of violence and fear. The third trial had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Not just their lives, not just Earth's safety, but the fate of every intelligent species in this region of space hung in the balance. Marcus reached for the communicator, knowing that the hardest conversation of his life was about to begin. Marcus's hand trembled as he reached for the quantum communicator. The device was unlike anything in human technology. It seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its purple glow pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The weight of what he was about to attempt pressed down on him like a physical force. "Captain, Dr. B. Rodriguez said quietly, "before you activate that, we need to think this through. If Earth has already dispatched a fleet, it means they've made a political decision at the highest levels. Changing their minds won't just require convincing a few officers. You'll need to convince the entire military command structure." Lieutenant Kim nodded grimly. "And they'll be analyzing every word for signs of alien influence. If they think you've been compromised, they won't just ignore your warnings. They might accelerate their timeline." Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing the same desperate hope and fear in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They understood what was at stake, not just their own lives, but the potential for humanity to prove it had evolved beyond its violent past. "Protocol. Your Majesty," he said to Xanthara, "what assurance do I have that you won't attack the fleet if I can't convince them to turn back?" The alien queen's expression grew even more somber. "None. If they arrive with hostile intent, I will defend myself and my domain. The weapons they carry could destroy everything I have left of my people, their memories, their art, their recorded history. I cannot allow that to happen, but if I succeed in convincing them, If you can truly convince them to turn back, to leave my domain in peace, then I will consider humanity's potential for redemption proven. You will be free to return to your people with a message of warning and hope. Marcus activated the communicator. The device hummed to life, and suddenly the air around them filled with the static of interstellar communication channels. After a few moments, a familiar voice crackled through the interference. "This is Admiral Sarah Harrison, Earth Defense Command. Identify yourself immediately." Marcus felt a wave of relief. Admiral Harrison had been his instructor at the academy, and she knew him well. If anyone would listen to him, it would be her. "Admiral Harrison, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the exploration vessel Endeavor. I'm transmitting from coordinates that should match our last known position." You see, there was a long pause, filled with the sound of hurried consultations on the other end of the channel. When Harrison spoke again, her voice was tight with controlled emotion. "Marcus, thank God you're alive. 6 months ago and feared the worst. Are you and your crew unharmed?" "We're all alive and uninjured, Admiral. But I need to speak with you urgently about the fleet you've dispatched to this location." Another pause, longer this time. Marcus could practically hear the security protocols being activated on the other end of the transmission. "Marcus, you need to understand that your communication is being monitored by multiple intelligence agencies. Before we discuss any operational details, I need to ask you some verification questions." "I understand, Admiral. Go ahead." "What was the name of the first ship you served on as an ensign?" "The Meridian, under Captain Rodriguez, no relation to my current science officer." "What was the subject of your master's thesis at the Academy?" "Optimization of long-range communication arrays for deep space exploration." "What did I tell you during our last conversation before your departure?" Marcus smiled slightly. "You said, try not to find anything too interesting out there, Chen." "I'm getting too old for first contact protocols." He heard what might have been a laugh from the other end of the channel. "All right, Marcus, it's really you. Now tell me, are you speaking under duress? Are there aliens present who might be influencing this conversation?" Marcus looked up at Zenthara, who watched the proceedings with intense interest. "Admiral, I'm going to answer that question with complete honesty. Yes, there are aliens present. Yes, they are listening to every word of this conversation. And no, I am not speaking under duress. I am choosing to speak because the alternative is a war that could destroy billions of innocent lives." The silence on the other end of the channel stretched so long that Marcus began to worry they'd lost the connection. When Admiral Harrison finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "Marcus, you need to understand what you're saying. Our analysis of your situation suggests you've encountered the entity known as the Xeno Queen, a spaceborne alien with reality manipulation abilities that represents a potential extinction-level threat to humanity. The fleet en route to your position is equipped to deal with threats of that magnitude. Admiral, the being I've encountered is indeed powerful, but she's not a threat to humanity unless we make her one. Her people were victims of human aggression 3,000 years ago. She's been waiting in exile ever since, hoping that humanity might evolve beyond its violent past." He heard what sounded like heated discussion in the background before Harrison's voice returned. "Marcus, I'm going to be blunt with you. Intelligence analysis suggests that any human exposed to this entity for an extended period would inevitably become compromised. Your current statements are consistent with alien psychological manipulation." Marcus felt frustration building in his chest. This was exactly what he'd feared. That Earth's leadership would be so locked into their paranoid assumptions that they couldn't hear the truth even when it was presented to them directly.
Admiral, I understand your concerns.
But I need you to consider the possibility that your intelligence analysis is wrong. What if the Space Witch mythology was created by the very humans who committed genocide against her people? What if the real threat to humanity isn't alien powers, but our own refusal to acknowledge and learn from our mistakes?
Doctor,
Rodriguez stepped forward and gestured for the communicator. Marcus nodded and handed it to him. "Admiral Harrison, this is Dr. James Rodriguez, xenoarchaeologist. I need to share something with you that might change your perspective on this situation. The alien we've encountered has shown us historical records of human activities dating back 3,000 years. Activities that are not mentioned anywhere in our official histories." "What kind of activities, Doctor?" "Systematic extermination campaigns against multiple alien species. Slave colonies where indigenous populations were worked to death. research facilities where aliens were subjected to medical experimentation without consent. Admiral, what if the lost centuries in our history aren't lost at all? What if they were deliberately erased to hide evidence of crimes against sentient beings? The silence this time was even longer. Marcus could imagine the chaos his crew's revelations were causing in Earth's command centers. Everything they believed about humanity's noble expansion into space was being challenged by their own people. Dr. Rodriguez, Admiral Harrison said finally, what you're suggesting would require a conspiracy spanning 3,000 years and involving countless institutions. It's simply not possible. Lieutenant Kim took the communicator next. Admiral, with respect, it wouldn't require a conspiracy. It would just require the same thing that's happened throughout human history. The winners write the textbooks and the losers get forgotten. How many indigenous populations on Earth had their histories erased by colonizers? How many atrocities were covered up by bureaucracy and time? But we have archaeological evidence, historical records, all created and maintained by the same civilization that would have benefited from covering up these crimes, Chief Park interrupted. Taking his turn at the communicator, Admiral, I'm an engineer. I know how easy it is to make inconvenient data disappear, especially when the people responsible for preserving that data are the same ones who would be condemned by it. Marcus reclaimed the communicator. Admiral, I know this is hard to accept. I know it challenges everything we've been taught about humanity's place in the universe. But I'm asking you to consider the possibility that we've been living a lie. And more importantly, I'm asking you to prevent that lie from causing another genocide. Marcus. Admiral Harrison's voice was heavy with conflict. Even if everything you're saying is true, I can't just turn back a fleet of 47 ships on your word alone. The political and military implications are enormous. Then don't take my word for it, Marcus said desperately. Send a small diplomatic vessel ahead of the main fleet. Let them verify our situation independently. But please, Admiral, don't let fear and prejudice drive humanity into another war it doesn't need to fight. And Thara stepped forward, her presence somehow affecting the quantum communication field. When she spoke, her voice carried across the interstellar distance with perfect clarity. Admiral Harrison of Earth, she said, I am Thara, last of the Void Empress line. Your captain speaks truth when he says I pose no threat to humanity unless threatened myself. I have waited 3 millennia for evidence that your species might have evolved beyond its violent origins. Do not disappoint me. The effect on the Earth end of the communication was immediate and dramatic. Marcus could hear alarms sounding, officers shouting orders, and the general chaos it came with an unprecedented first contact situation. This is impossible, Harrison's voice was tight with shock. Our quantum communication channels are supposed to be secure against any form of alien interference. I am not interfering, Admiral. I am participating. Your people have developed impressive technology, but you still think in terms of mechanical limitations. Consciousness itself can transcend such boundaries when properly focused. Marcus could practically feel the panic building on Earth as military leaders confronted the reality that their most secure communication systems could be accessed by alien intelligence. But he also heard something else in Admiral Harrison's voice. Curiosity fighting with fear. What? What do you want from us? Harrison asked. Nothing, Xenthara replied simply. I want nothing from humanity except to be left in peace. But your people destroyed my civilization, scattered my people across the void, and drove me into exile in this forsaken corner of space. I have built a small sanctuary here where the memories of my people can be preserved. I ask only that you respect its boundaries. And if we don't, Xenthara's voice grew cold. Then you will learn why your ancestors called us space witches, and why they needed 40,000 ships to defeat us the first time. Your current fleet, impressive as it may be, is insufficient for the task. Marcus jumped back into the conversation before the situation could escalate further. Admiral, this doesn't have to be a confrontation. Xenthara has shown us evidence of humanity's past crimes, but she's also testing whether we've changed. Whether we can choose diplomacy over violence, truth over comfortable lies. And what do you believe, Marcus? Have we changed? Marcus looked around at his crew, then up at Xenthara, then back at the communicator in his hands. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the chance to speak for his entire species, to chart a course toward either redemption or destruction.
I believe we can change, Admiral.
I believe we must change. The evidence of our past mistakes is overwhelming, but evidence of our capacity for growth is all around us too. The Exploration Service exists because we dream of something better than conquest. The fact that you're listening to us right now proves that fear doesn't have to override reason. He paused, gathering his thoughts for what might be the most important words he'd ever speak.
Admiral, I'm asking you to trust in humanity's potential rather than its history.
Turn the fleet back, send diplomats instead of warships. Let this be the moment when our species finally chooses to grow beyond the violence that has defined us for so long. The silence stretched across the light years between them, filled with the weight of decision that would shape the future of multiple species. Marcus held his breath, knowing that everything they'd learned, everything they discovered about themselves and their people, hung in the balance of Admiral Harrison's next words. In the background, he could hear heated arguments, urgent consultations, and the sound of a civilization struggling to redefine itself in the face of uncomfortable truths. The third trial had become something none of them had expected, not just a test of their courage, but a test of humanity's willingness to confront its own darkness and choose a different path forward. The fate of the galaxy might well depend on what happened in the next few minutes. The quantum communicator crackled with static as the silence stretched across impossible distances. Marcus could hear the heated discussions continuing on Earth, voices raised in argument as humanity's leadership grappled with revelations that challenged everything they thought they knew about their own history. Finally, Admiral Harrison's voice returned, heavy with the weight of decision. Marcus, I need you to understand the position you're putting us in. What you're asking, turning back a military fleet based on the word of an alien entity that our best intelligence considers an existential threat, it goes against every protocol, every safeguard we've developed.
I know, Admiral, Marcus replied, but I'm not asking you to trust an alien entity.
I'm asking you to trust your own people. Trust the crew that served under you, trained under you, learned from you. We've seen the evidence with our own eyes. We've been tested in ways you can't imagine. And we're telling you that humanity has a choice to make right now: repeat the mistakes of the past or evolve beyond them. Dr. Rodriguez leaned toward the communicator. Admiral, may I suggest a compromise? Instead of turning back the entire fleet, send one ship ahead with a full diplomatic team. Let them verify our situation independently. If they conclude we're compromised, the main fleet can proceed as planned. If they confirm what we're telling you, then humanity gets a chance to handle this situation with wisdom instead of fear. Marcus heard urgent whispers from the Earth side of the channel. Then Admiral Harrison's voice again. Dr. Rodriguez, that's actually not impossible. We could dispatch the diplomatic vessel Harmony with a full first contact team. They could reach your position 3 weeks ahead of the main fleet. Zenthara spoke again, her voice carrying across the quantum link with that unsettling ease. Admiral Harrison, I find this proposal acceptable. I will allow your diplomatic vessel to approach my domain under a flag of truce. But understand this, if your diplomats come in peace, they will be received in peace. If they come with treachery in their hearts, they will learn why the void itself fears my wrath. And what about Captain Chen and his crew? They have passed my trials, Zenthara said, and Marcus felt a surge of surprise. They had passed? When had that been decided? They have shown compassion without naivety, wisdom without arrogance, and courage without recklessness. They are free to return with the diplomatic vessel when it departs. Admiral Harrison's voice carried a note of relief. Very well. The Harmony will depart Earth within the next 48 hours with full diplomatic credentials and a mandate for peaceful contact. Captain Chen, I'm trusting you to serve as their liaison with the SARP with Queen Zenthara until the situation can be resolved. Understood, Admiral, Marcus replied. I won't let you down. You already haven't let me down, Marcus. You've all performed beyond the call of duty. Just be careful. We're in uncharted territory here. The communication link closed, leaving Marcus and his crew standing in the vast throne room with Zenthara. The alien queen studied them with her star-like eyes, her expression unreadable. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, you said we passed your trials. What did we prove? Zenthara was quiet for a long moment. then began walking toward one of the massive memorial walls. Marcus and his crew followed, their footsteps echoing in the enormous space. "You prove that humanity has indeed evolved," she said finally. "Not completely, perhaps not even uniformly, but enough to give hope. In the first trial, you chose to carry the burden of knowledge rather than seeking easy solutions. In the second, you faced uncomfortable truths about your own species without denying them or making excuses. In the third, you risked everything to prevent violence, even when violence might have been easier." She stopped before a section of the memorial wall that was darker than the rest. Here, the lights representing her people's lives were dimmed but not extinguished. "These represent my people who died not in the initial genocide, but in the centuries that followed, be slowly, quietly, forgotten by a universe that had moved on. Your species has indeed caused great harm, but you have also demonstrated capacity for great growth." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Your Majesty, what happened to the survivors of your people? Are there others like you still alive?" "Scattered across the galaxy," Zinthara replied sadly. "Most have abandoned the old ways, taken new forms, integrated with other species, or retreated to isolated systems. I am the last who remembers our civilization in its full glory. I am the keeper of our memory and the guardian of our shame." "Shame?" Lieutenant Kim asked. "But your people were the victims." Zentara turned to face them, and for the first time Marcus saw something other than anger or sadness in her eyes. He saw regret. "My dear child, we were not blameless in what transpired. Yes, your ancestors struck the first blow and bore the greater responsibility for the genocide that followed, but we were not entirely innocent victims." She gestured, and the air shimmered around them. Suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be a council chamber, filled with beings that looked like Zenthara but somehow more radiant, more alive. "This is a memory of the Great Council held 1 year before your ancestors began their campaign of extermination," Zenthara explained. "Watch and see the decision that helped condemn my people." Marcus watched as the council debated how to respond to the growing human presence in their space contact, for sharing their advanced technology to help humanity develop more safely. Others called for defensive measures, for establishing clear boundaries that humans wouldn't be allowed to cross. But a significant faction led by what appeared to be Zenthara's younger self argued for a different approach entirely. "Let them come," the younger Zenthara was saying. Let them reveal their true nature. If they are the violent savages our scouts report, then the galaxy will see them for what they are. If they can be reasoned with, we will know it quickly enough."
You're suggesting we test them?
Asked one council member. "I'm suggesting we give them enough rope to hang themselves with," the younger Zenthar replied. "Humans respond to strength. If we show weakness, they will exploit it. If we show our full power immediately, they will unite against us in fear. But if we appear vulnerable while remaining secretly strong, we can judge their character by how they choose to treat the helpless." Marcus felt sick as he understood what he was witnessing. You deliberately appeared weak to test humanity's moral character. The memory faded, and they were back in the throne room with the older, sadder Zenthara of the present. "Yes," she said quietly. "We allowed your scouts to believe we were declining, technologically stagnant, divided among ourselves. We wanted to see if humanity would offer assistance to a supposedly failing civilization, or if they would see an opportunity for exploitation. And humanity chose exploitation," Dr. Rodriguez said grimly. "Spectacularly so. Your ancestors didn't just raid our outer worlds or demand tribute. They launched a campaign of complete extermination, determined to erase us entirely from the universe. We had tested them expecting greed or aggression. We never imagined genocidal fury." Chief Park shook his head. "But that doesn't make you responsible for what happened. Testing someone's character doesn't justify their crimes." "No," Zenthara agreed. "But it made us complicit in creating the conditions that allowed those crimes to occur. We could have made peaceful contact from a position of obvious strength. We could have established clear boundaries and enforced them. Instead, we played games with lives and civilizations, and 47 million of my people paid the price for our arrogance." Marcus began to understand something profound about what they were really dealing with. This wasn't just a story about human cruelty or alien victimization. It was a story about the dangers of pride, prejudice, and the assumptions that different species made about each other. Your Majesty, he said, what happens now? When a diplomatic vessel arrives, what are you hoping to accomplish? I want to see if humanity has truly learned from its mistakes, Centaur replied. Not just the obvious lessons about avoiding genocide, but the subtler ones about humility, communication, and the courage to admit when you've been wrong. She walked toward the center of the throne room where a complex display showed star charts of the surrounding galaxy. Hundreds of systems were highlighted in different colors. These are the locations of known alien civilizations, she explained. The green markers represent species that have had positive contact with humanity. The red markers represent species that have been displaced, absorbed, or destroyed by human expansion. The yellow markers represent species that humanity doesn't know about yet. Marcus studied the display with growing unease. The red markers outnumbered the green ones by a significant margin. As you can see, Zentara continued, the pattern of human expansion over the past 3,000 years suggests that the attitudes that led to my people's destruction have not disappeared. They have simply become more sophisticated. But there are green markers too, Lieutenant Kim pointed out. That proves humanity is capable of peaceful contact. Yes, with species that pose no threat and offer no significant resources for exploitation. The pattern becomes clear when you analyze the data. Humanity makes peace with the weak and wages war on the strong. Dr. Rodriguez was studying the display intently. Your Majesty, some of these yellow markers are quite close to human space. Species we could have contacted by now if we'd been looking. Indeed. And now you must decide what to do with this knowledge. Will you return to Earth and advocate for a more ethical approach to alien contact? Will you push for investigations into the research facilities you witnessed? Will you fight to change the systems that have allowed these abuses to continue? Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt building in his own heart. Yes, we will. Even knowing the cost? Your careers will likely be destroyed. You'll be branded as alien sympathizers or worse. Some of the most powerful institutions in human space will work to discredit everything you say. Then we'll find others who are willing to listen, Chief Park said firmly. There have to be people in positions of power who want to do the right thing. And if there aren't, then we'll create them, Dr. Rodriguez replied. We'll build a movement, start with the younger generation, change human civilization from the ground up if we have to. Zenthara smiled, and for the first time since they'd met her, the expression seemed genuinely warm. Now you sound like the humans I had hoped to find. He gestured, and the star chart display shifted to show a different view of the galaxy. This time, the markers showed potential futures, paths humanity could take based on different choices. There is still hope, she said. Your species stands at a crossroads. Down one path lies the continued expansion of an empire built on exploitation and the gradual extinction of every other intelligent species in the galaxy. Down the other lies something unprecedented, a Gal,